Hello, fourth year students. Today we have a new lecture in literary criticism entitled Marxist Literary Criticism, which is one of the main literary theories that we find is used as an approach to many literary texts. Actually, it's considered to be one of the recent, or let's say modern, schools of literary criticism. Okay, so as a beginning for our study of this literary school, or theory, we can say, we need to know some basic terms, some basic information. One of the fundamental concepts of classical Marxist thought is the concept of base and structure. So actually, if you are familiar with Marxism, you already know what these terms are. But if you are still new to this theory, this is the first time you read, you need to know these basic elements or these basic terms. What do you mean by the base and what do you mean by the superstructure? Actually, there are two, let's say, we can say divisions that Marxism has created for society. Base refers to the production forces or the materials and resources that generate the goods society needs. What we mean by base is the economic means of production. What are the means that a society has in producing goods, in producing, let's say, products which actually meet the needs of society? Okay, the as I've told you, economic means production. I mean, what are the means, economic means, forces that this society has? While the superstructure describes all other aspects of society, anything else other than the economic means of production, they are called superstructure. Okay, anything else, including, of course, what? Art, culture, art, and ideas. Okay, so there is a relationship actually between these two elements, the base and the superstructure. There is a relationship, and this relationship is mainly based on conflict. There is always this constant conflict that's happening between these two things. According to Marxism, society progresses. Why there is always this constant conflict and struggle between these two forces? Because of this because of this struggle between these opposing forces, society progresses. I mean, this is essential for society in order to develop, in order to progress, that these two opposing forces, they are always or constantly struggling and fighting with each other. There is always a clash between them. It is this struggle between opposing classes that result in social transformation. So how do societies develop? How do they progress? How do they take a step forward? This is according to Marxism. There is always a kind of war or clash that should take place in order for progress and development to take place. Okay, history progresses through this class struggle. So actually, Marxism uh, believes that history is nothing but the constant struggle between these opposing classes. If you look at history, it is just a history of clashes between these forces. This is the way they read history. Okay, class struggle originates out of the exploitation of one class by another throughout history. There is always a class, for example, that this class owns the means of production, the economic means, and what does this class do? Through controlling these means of production, or let's say the economic means of production, they control the other classes and they dominate over them, and they decide for the other classes the way they think, their life. Let's say they dominate even their mentalities. So there is always one class which has the means of production that control the other class. This is, according to Marxism, this is the case in every, let's say, period of history. In every period of history, if you go back and read the different ages, different eras, you're going to find that this was the situation all the time. Okay, so Marxism is not primarily a literary theory. What does this has to do with literature? Actually, literature is one of the aspects of societies. Okay, this is when we speak about societies throughout history, when we speak about different elements in a society, the production of literature is part of that. Okay, so how can this theory of Marxism influence literature, or what does it have to do with literature? When it comes to literary theory, some say that Marxism is not, let's say, very precisely, if we want to speak about it, it's not a literary theory. Okay, just like, for example, Romanticism, or just like, for example, let's say, realism. It's not something we can say that it is a pure literary theory. Okay, that can be used to interpret text. Unlike other schools of criticism, it is cultural theory. It's more related to culture. You see, um, because we know that literature is part of culture, so we can say that this cultural theory influences literature. So we can think about it as more a cultural theory related to culture more than to literature, but there are certain aspects we can study that are concerning literature. So what does this cultural theory embodies? It embodies a set of social, economic, and political ideas that its followers believe will enable them to interpret and change their world. So Marxist thinkers and theorists, they all the time take with them what? They take with them, okay, a number of, or let's say a set of social and economic and political ideas, and they believe that these, this set of ideas can be applied anywhere or everywhere, so that whenever it is applied, it causes kind of change in the world. Okay, when you apply it to economy, when you apply it to politics, when you apply it to society, also when you apply it to literature, in all these cases you're going to change the world. Okay, so actually they basically, if you notice here, notice social, economic, and political. So actually they believe that these elements are very influential. When you want to interpret any society, any action or any activity by any society, you have to look at the social influences, economic influences, political influences. Okay, what does this mean? It means that as I am reading and analyzing literature, I should put in mind what are the social circumstances, what are the economic conditions, what are the political ideas that were dominant in the time that this literary text was produced. Okay, ultimate reality, declares Marxism, is material, not spiritual. This is very important to know about Marxism. Material. Okay, the sorry. Reality of any society is material. What does it mean that it is material? If you remember the theory devised by Plato, if you remember Plato believed the contrary. Plato actually believed in some sort of spiritual reality. But for the Marxist thinkers, it is material. What does this mean? It means that what influences you as an individual are all material factors. For example, the society you live in, the social norms that influence you are considered to be material influence. The let's say the economic conditions in the society you live in, also they influence you. These are considered material influences. Okay, not something, or what we mean by material, it means something outside you, something from the outside world, not something inside you, not something spiritual, personal, internal. Okay, not some kind of philosophy or ideas that you have in your mind. So what we know is that human beings exist and live in social groups. Okay, social groups, socialism. I mean, it's very well known. Marxism means we are talking about socialism. We are living in social groups. We are all the time. A person is, let's say, his behavior, his way of thinking, his way of even eating and drinking. Imagine, all these things are controlled and influenced by the society that he lives in, by the social group that he belongs to. So you cannot speak of any kind of let's say, any kind of features that distinguish the individual without speaking about the society that has made these features related to them. okay، يعني احنا كأشخاص أي مميزات أو أي خصائص نتمتع بيها سببها كوننا ولدنا في مجتمعات معينة هي اللي خلتنا نصير بهذا الشكل. We cannot escape the influence of society we live in. Okay, it decides, it determines who we are. Our identity as individuals is decided by our societies. All our actions and responses are related in some way to our culture and society. I mean, the way you speak, the way you talk, the way you eat, the way you, for example, think about certain things or subjects, or the way you behave, all are influenced by the culture you come from, or are the result of the society you live in. That's why we have all these kind of differences around the world of people living in different cultures. Okay, the reason, for example, you respond to certain things, certain for example, you can think of it like this. يعني بعض الأحيان أكو بعض الأشياء اللي مجتمعاتنا مثلا تنظر لها إنه هي خلينا نقول خطأ أو عيب، بس بمجتمعات أخرى خلينا نقول يجوز حتى مثلا خلينا نقول المجتمعات الغربية هي ممكن تكون عادية. شنو سبب هذا التفاوت؟ سبب هذا التفاوت إنه إحنا ثقافة وهم ثقافة. إحنا كوننا أفراد موجودين وعايشين بثقافة معينة، فلذلك هذا الشيء أثر على نظرتنا لهذا المفهوم أو هذا الخطأ أو هذا الشيء وقلنا عليه إنه هو عيب. لكن في مجتمعات أخرى لا، هذا الشيء مثلا ثقافتهم ما تقول إنه هذا الشيء عيب أو خطأ. You see, so the way that you look at things is largely influenced by your culture. This is what Marx's theory say. When we examine our daily lives, beliefs, and values, we will discover that our cultural and social circumstances determine who we are, and not religion nor our supposed philosophy of life or our worldview. So actually, material, environmental, social, political factors and circumstances determine who we are, how we behave the way we do, why we think the way we do. All these things are determined by such material causes. Okay, so in order to think of Marxism in terms of literature, how is it applied, or in what way it can be related to the practice of literary criticism? Marxism's methodology is a dynamic process, okay, that maintains that a proper critique of a text cannot exist in isolation from the cultural situation in which the text evolved. What does this mean? It means that now I have this text, okay, and I want to analyze it. I want to evaluate it. I'm a critic. So it is not enough for me just to look for the, let's say, the aesthetic elements, figures of speech, maybe linguistic features, let's say aesthetic elements, ideas. It's not enough, because when I'm doing this, according to Marxist theory, when I'm doing this, I'm looking at the text in isolation. And this is not true for them. This is not the right way in analyzing a text. What about the cultural situation in which the author was living during writing this piece? See, so what about the kind of cultural values that influenced the writer as he was writing this work of literature. I have to take them into consideration. Why? Because understanding a literary text is a dynamic process. Okay, dynamic. It could be influenced and greatly, let's say, it's not something constant. You just do all these kind of analyses about the features of the text and that's it and it's over. No, it is dynamic, it is changing, it's ever changing. As long as there are cultural values that, let's say, that can be analyzed and studied, that can be understood in different ways, it means that we have different and we have a dynamic understanding of this text. Marxists argue that the study of literature and the study of society are intricately bound. See, actually they mix these two kind of studies, literature and society. The way you study literature is very similar to the way that you study society. You are analyzing, when you analyze uh, the behavior of members of society, it's not very much different from analyzing the behavior of characters in literature, because after all, the characters you find in literature are just reflections, or maybe they are just embodiment of real characters from society. So both situations are not very much different. Studying and analyzing the literary and aesthetic elements of a text must include the dynamic relationship of the text to history and to the economic means of production and consumption. Okay, actually Marxism believes that everything should go back to the economic means of production. See, everything, you should see what kind of economic values are governing this society, and then based on that you can understand all the other things that result from this. Okay, that helped create the text and its ideologies. It's very important. This term, ideologies, this is a very essential term in Marxism, okay, of the authors and the readers. If you want to give example in order to understand this, for example, the Marxists, you know, they are against capitalism. So they believe that, for example, if a society is governed by capitalist means, economic means of production, okay, which means that we have capital، يعني رأس المال هو اللي يتحكم، صاحب رأس المال هو اللي يتحكم، مو صحيح؟ the one who owns the capital, they are the ones who govern, they have the means of production. And we all know in capitalist systems, the profit is the number one, gaining profits, and the wealth is concentrated in the hands of few members of society. كل احنا نعرف رأسمالية اللي هي تتركز الثروة بيد أصحاب رؤوس الأموال، أو هم مجموعة بس يعني من المجتمع، ومثل خلينا نقول الشيوعية أو الاشتراكية اللي تقول لازم تكون الثروة بيد، خلينا نقول، أو الثروة مشاعة أو هي بيد العامة، توزيع عادل للثروات. اوكي، سو هسه هاي الرأسمالية هي تعتبر الأيديولوجية اللي من عندها راح حتى الثقافة، حتى الأدب، حتى العلاقات الاجتماعية راح تتأثر بسبب شنو؟ بسبب وجود نظام اقتصادي رأسمالي اللي هو يتحكم ب خلينا نقول طرق الإنتاج اللي تتبع الفكر الرأسمالي. فبالتالي ايش راح يصير؟ راح يصير انه هاي العلاقات الاقتصادية راح تأثر ايضا على العلاقات الاجتماعية بين الافراد. شلون؟ لانه لما تكون الثروة متركزة بيد مثلا مجموعة فقط من الناس، بينما الآخرين هم فقط يعملون، وقيمتهم الاجتماعية راح تكون بناء على قدر ما هم يساهمون في أرباح هاي المجموعة القليلة من الناس اللي هي تمتلك الثروة أو تمتلك رأس المال. فبالتالي ايش راح يصير؟ راح يصير أيضا أنه كعلاقات اجتماعية وثقافية أيضا راح تتأثر. You see that because of such economic clash, let's say, that happens on the level of economics, we are going to see that individuals, even on the level of their social relationships, they are also going to be affected. Okay, and this is what we mean by ideology. I mean, authors, for example, who support capitalist system, as authors, they are going to embody these, let's say, these principles in their writings, this ideology. They are going to write based on this ideology. Okay. Marxism in literature and literary theory examines how literature is part of the superstructure and can never fully escape the influence of its social and economic context. Okay, literature is part of the superstructure. We said that superstructure involves many things like culture, art, and also literature. So it cannot escape the influence of social and economic context. How literature may sometimes consciously or unconsciously become a channel to articulate certain ideologies. Okay, actually, there are writers, of course, when we speak about, and not only capitalism, there are also communist, for example, Marxist texts that try to spread, or when you read them, you feel that they are channeling, or they are consciously or unconsciously, they are communicating their own, let's say, their own principles or their own theories. The extent to which the social and economic background of the author informs the literary text. Okay, so what is this society that the author is coming from? What are the dominant classes in it? How means of production are controlled or governed? All these things are going to influence author as a member of this society. So as you are reading the text, you should analyze and try to reach to these influences as you are reading. Let's see one example here. What does it mean to apply Marxist? And of course, when we are talking about Marxist theory and the application of this theory, we are not just talking about our times only, because these theories, they can be used to analyze texts that appeared even before the appearance of Marxist, let's say, theory or Marxism as a whole. طبعا انتوا كلكم تعرفون الماركسية جاي اسمها منين؟ من كارل ماركس، المفكر الألماني والمنظر الشهير. يعني أكو نصوص كتبت حتى قبل، مو قبل ماركس، يعني قبل مئات السنين. مع ذلك بعض الأحيان يتم استخدام نظرية الماركسية بالتحليل الأدبي ويحللون حتى هاي النصوص القديمة. I mean, even the ancient texts can be analyzed using Marxism. Like, for example, look at this example here. In Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, it's written in the Renaissance. You see, it's very old. I mean, in the 16th or 15th century, the struggle between the two lovers' families symbolizes the conflict between the rising bourgeois values against feudalism. So these are two social classes. Okay, one of them have the means of production, the other one is superstructure or the other class. Okay, and there is this transition. You see, this is how the theory is applied. Marxism can be applied to any text, even the older text. Why? Because you see, if you remember, one of the main tenets of this theory is that throughout history, societies progress by the clash and the conflict between two different classes. Okay, so here some critics actually interpret Romeo and Juliet in terms of Marxist theory. How they see that, you know the story of Romeo and Juliet. Both are each one of them belong actually to a family that is an enemy for the other one. So why they are enemies. According to the Marxist theory, if we analyze it based on Marxist literary theory, one belongs to the, let's say, uh, that these two families, they are symbolizing, or they are representing the conflict of the time that was happening between two classes, the bourgeois and the feudalist class. Okay, so this is one of the readings. Actually, if you go to many other writings or literary works, you are going to see that Marxist theorists, they are all the time trying to show that Marxism is not something new. No, it can be applied to other texts, and it can come out with certain understanding of these texts that maybe were not aware of, because we were still not aware of Marxism as a literary theory. Okay, actually Marxism literary theory is it's a wide topic، يعني هو موضوع شوية واسع. يعني أنا حاولت بس مجرد إنه أجيب بعض الأفكار الرئيسية. If you want to consult other references, of course you are free to search. You are going to find actually many examples, not only examples, but also you are going to find many terms that are related to Marxist theory. And I advise you to read further and to have more idea about this literary, this we can call it actually one of the schools of literary criticism. It's really interesting. You are going to find many other important and significant information. So I hope to see you soon in many other videos. Thank you very much.